What's up, guys? All right, I wanted to shoot a video on the coronavirus because I've had a lot of questions about it, and people wonder, do they need to worry about it, or is it overblown? Is it not a big deal? Is it just like the flu? What's the deal with it? So let's just kind of discuss. Now, before I get into it, I would encourage you to go to the CDC website and read about it for yourself and stay up to date with the CDC's information. Okay, so one thing that I heard that was not actually accurate, that a friend of mine was talking about, is that, well, the coronavirus has always been around, so we shouldn't worry. Why are we worried about it now? This is just fake news. But that's not true. Okay, so yeah, the coronavirus has been around. The coronavirus, think of the coronavirus as like a family of viruses, and within that family, you have different types of viruses. Okay, so we've known that there was this grouping of viruses called coronaviruses. And so that's why I think the reason they got that name is, like, if you look at them under a microscope, they have like this, almost like a crown coming off around them. I'm not 100% sure of that. I think that's the reason it was named that, though. Some of those types of viruses may cause something like the common cold, right? But with the current virus that is causing so much problems, now I think its actual name is the SARS-CoV-2, and it is a novel virus, meaning a new virus, right? And it from a mutation, and is causing a lot of problems. Now, the disease that it causes is that COVID-19 that you've seen. So if you're wondering what's the difference between the coronavirus and COVID-19, nothing really. It's just semantics. So COVID-19 basically means coronavirus disease 2019. So the disease that the virus SARS-CoV-2 causes is the COVID-19. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. And what does it do? It affects the respiratory tract. It causes cough, fever, shortness of breath, and people are dying. Now, another bit of misinformation you hear is people say stuff like, "Oh, it just affects the elderly, or the really young, or the sick." Well, those people are more affected, but man, that's kind of a heartless thing to say. Those are our people, okay? That's our parents, that's our grandparents, that's our babies, that's our sick folks in the hospital. Yes, we need to protect those people. We need to worry if something is killing those people. It's not like they were just going to die anyway. I mean, we're all going to die anyway eventually, right? But anyway, so let's just kind of get that mentality out of there. The reason the coronavirus is concerning, and it is concerning, and you should be concerned, is because the estimated mortality rate is between 2 to 4%. Now, it's hard to come up with mortality rates sometimes, so that might change as there's more people infected. They might learn more. The mortality rate might be different in another part of the world than it is in the U.S. But a 2 to 4% mortality rate is a big deal. And just to compare it with the flu's mortality rate is about 0.1%. Okay? And you've probably heard about people dying from the flu this year. I've heard of several people, right, who've gotten very sick after getting the flu. So if this mortality rate is 2 to 4% and the flu's mortality rate is 0.1%, I mean, that ought to tell you something right there. And so if it becomes as widespread as they're worried that it will, we're talking about a major problem. Now, the last major pandemic illness that we had was back in 1918 with the Spanish flu. And there's varying reports on how many people it killed. I've seen upwards of 50 million people were killed, maybe even 100 million. Like, it just kind of, which that's a big difference right there. So, but they estimate, I read another report. So what's the percentage on it? Well, about 2 to 4% mortality rate. And so I think when you start seeing those kind of numbers and you start understanding it in a historical context, you can see the issue. Now, one thing that I want, I might shoot another video about preparation and things like that, or I'll end this video with it. I'm not sure. So, but let's just stick with the coronavirus right now. So, prevention is going to be similar to preventing other viruses. So, it is spread through respiratory droplets. So, somebody sneezes. I've read that it can travel about 6 feet. So, if you're walking past somebody in a room and they sneeze, you could get infected. Now, it's by basically getting on your hands, and then you wipe your eyes or your nose, your mouth, and that's how it spreads, okay? So you can protect yourself by washing your hands often, and that would be like soap water under a sink for 20 to 30 seconds, or by using like an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. These are effective. You just need to do it often, okay? You can protect yourself by not going places where there's coronavirus. And you can protect yourself. They're saying, right now they're recommending you not go buy masks. And the reason, now masks aren't 100% effective. One reason is it can spread through the eyes. Okay, so if you don't have a, big face guard, but also the reason that is because they want healthcare workers to be able to get masks. Okay? And if healthcare workers can't get masks, they're more likely to get infected. And it just becomes this very bad cycle of infection, right? So, the thing I want you to focus on, though, is you may or may not be able to prevent this from spreading, right? There's not much you can do personally about the government's outreach and the World Health Organization, what these organizations are doing to help prevent spread, right? You can do your part. But one thing you can do is prepare your body, and you should have been doing this a long time ago. I love the old proverb, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, the second best time is today. So in other words, in 10 years ago, you should have been preparing for today, meaning you should have been doing everything you could to be as healthy as possible today. And being healthy will not prevent you from getting the coronavirus, right? But strength is not a weakness. Physical health is not a weakness. Like, it's not going to hurt you. And it might just save your life. The other thing you can do is prepare so I guess I am going to talk a little bit about preparation, because you got to start thinking, like, if China shuts down and we get all this stuff from China, if people start getting infected here, what about the things we take for granted? Like my buddy who works for the power company. What if the whole power company gets infected and we get a tree falls on something, a breaker, whatever, and you're out of power? There's no one there to fix it. There's things we take for granted. What if the police force, a majority of them, so there's a shortage of people looking out for you and your safety and your good, right? And you add a shortage of police officers to a shortage of food and an ill-prepared population, well, then you got to start thinking, if you're the one who's prepared, well, you better be prepared to protect it. And I'm not going to try to get into any kind of crazy conspiracy theories or, survivalist mindset stuff, which I think that is important, right? And being prepared. I'm not perfect at that. Like, I'm not really what you'd call a prepper, but I think this shows us that what we should have been doing 10 years ago, it's time to do today. So make sure you can go at least a couple of weeks without food, water, electricity. What would you need? How much toilet paper do you need? Like, what hygiene items? How much toothpaste? Things like that. Like, what do you need to store now in case there's an emergency? And God forbid there is one. I'm not one of these people who hopes things go poorly just so I can show, look, I was prepared and you weren't. I like power. I like running water. I like hot showers. So I like to keep my people safe, my family safe. I don't want threats to my family. But I think we need to be prepared. And so if you weren't preparing 10 years ago, if you're not ready today, it's time to start. Now, 2 weeks may not be long enough, but I think that's a good start, because you can get prepared in 2 weeks very quickly with little extra money spent. Now, if you try to prepare to, within the next week to be ready for a 3-month sabbatical, that could be difficult, right? But make sure, make sure your cars are full with gas. Make sure you got water. Make sure you got 2 weeks of food and water. Make sure you've got the things you need. Make sure you've got some cash on hand. Make sure you've got, I'm not going to say it, make sure you've got the resources you need to secure your house and your family and keep them safe. Make sure, and there's one thing that is the most important of all. Make sure you're spiritually prepared, because all battles are inevitably a spiritual battle. All war is spiritual war. And that's the only battle that really matters in the end. And so maybe you've put off preparing for that. And maybe it's time to start. So start saying a prayer. And then start getting everything ready. All right, guys, I'm Dr. Chris Park. Hope this was helpful. We'll see you.